Welcome to the Foundry by Forge College. Let's dive right into this explainer on protocol efficiency metrics and analysis. This is actually a really crucial part of understanding transaction forwarding strategies in Gulfstream, which, as you know, sits right at the heart of our advanced Solana concepts track. Because look, if you've ever wondered how we actually prove our Web3 protocols are running efficiently, instead of just sort of crossing our fingers and hoping for the best, well, we're going to figure exactly that out today. So let's start things off with the classic traffic controller's dilemma. If a transaction gets forwarded quickly but creates a massive traffic jam in the process, is it really efficient? It's so easy to look at a system and think, wow, that processed incredibly fast, right? But faster processing can absolutely mask some pretty hidden, disastrous resource drains. It's kind of like flooring the gas pedal just to race to a red light. I mean, sure, you got there fast, but you just ruined your brake pads and probably terrified everyone in the crosswalk. Now, in our previous lesson, we covered latency reduction and load balancing techniques. We talked a lot about priority queuing, aggressive batching, and moving transactions closer to validators. But qualitative ideas like, hey, let's reduce latency or let's balance the load really need to be backed up by cold, hard data. So today, we're moving away from those theories and stepping into precise, objective protocol measurement. We're literally building our ultimate measurement toolkit so we can judge these strategies the right way. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with why we measure efficiency, then define our core protocol metrics, explore a highway mental model, do a strategy showdown, quantify those trade-offs, and wrap up with next steps. Okay, section 1. Why measure efficiency? We really need to separate the user experience from the actual system cost. Moving right along to section 2. Core protocol metrics. Let's open up the traffic controller's toolkit. Whenever we measure forwarding, we have to look at two distinct sides of the coin. You got the user, who mostly just wants low latency, and then you have the node operators, who care deeply about memory and bandwidth. And honestly, if we just optimize for the user, we might accidentally crash the whole system. So these 6 key metrics give us that holistic view. Median latency is your 50th percentile, basically the typical time from submission to confirmation. But whatever you do, never ignore tail latency. That's the 95th or 99th percentile, and it tells us how the absolute slowest transactions are suffering due to queuing and reordering. Then we have throughput, which measures the raw, committed, unique transactions per second. Next is goodput, which strips out the junk. We'll expand on that in just a second. Forwarding bandwidth measures the network bytes used just to move things around. And finally, buffer occupancy tells us how much memory is eaten up by pending transactions. The absolute most crucial takeaways here. Choosing only one of these metrics to look at will completely mislead your analysis. So let's double-click on that crucial point, distinguishing raw throughput from goodput. Goodput is the rate of successful, unique transactions progressing without duplication, being discarded, or hitting protocol-level replace. Think of it this way. Driving in circles in a parking lot really fast might technically increase your mileage, but it definitely doesn't count as arriving at your destination. Goodput is the true measure of how many transactions actually arrived, successfully progressed, and were useful. Section 3. The highway mental model. Let's try visualizing the invisible here. Let's map these abstract Web3 concepts to the physical world for a second. I want you to picture a massive highway system. Step 1. Your entry nodes act as dispatch hubs, packing up and sending out packages. Step 2. The validators are the final destinations receiving those packages. And step 3, forwarding bandwidth is basically the equivalent of how many orange delivery vans you have out there on the road. So if your protocol is using rules that aggressively duplicate forwards just to ensure they arrive, well, you are essentially sending out a massive fleet of redundant delivery vans, all carrying the exact same package. Now let's connect our actual data metrics directly to this highway. Median latency? That's your typical travel time when traffic is just flowing beautifully on the main route. Tail latency? That represents those slow-moving, agonizing traffic jams caused by local bottlenecks or accidents. And goodput is the actual number of packages successfully unloaded and accepted at the destination without being returned. Now, think about this. If we use an aggressive pre-forwarding strategy, it's literally like sending way too many of those orange vans onto the road. Sure, the very first van might get there a tiny bit faster, which drops your median latency, but the sheer volume of vehicles causes immense congestion, which means your tail latency completely skyrockets for everyone caught behind them. Which brings us to section 4, strategy showdown. We're pitting conservative against aggressive. Let's put 2 specific approaches under the exact same synthetic load of 10,000 transactions and see what happens. Strategy A is our conservative forward-on-demand approach. It gives us a median latency of 220 milliseconds, a very solid goodput of 158 transactions per second, and uses a pretty modest 12 megabytes per second of forwarding bandwidth. Now, look at strategy B, which is our aggressive pre-forwarding approach, sending data to multiple validators at once. The median latency drops to a blazing 160 milliseconds. At first glance, you might think, oh wow, strategy B is the clear winner, right? But look a little closer. The goodput actually dropped to 140 transactions per second. And the forwarding bandwidth absolutely exploded, up to 52 megabytes per second. It is eating up massive amounts of network bandwidths just to push fewer successful unique transactions. Section 5, quantifying the trade-offs. Time for the big reveal. Okay, here is the plot twist. To truly understand what is happening under the hood here, we have to normalize our data by calculating the goodput per megabyte. By dividing the goodput by the bandwidth used, we get a clean efficiency score that makes this resource trade-off explicitly clear. Strategy A yields 13.2 transactions per megabyte. Strategy B, it yields a measly 2.7. This normalization completely reveals that strategy B is actually a resource-wasting disaster. It only achieves that fast median latency by flooding the entire network with duplicated effort. It's essentially sending 20 heavy delivery vans just to deliver a single postcard. Now, when you see awful efficiency like that in the real world, you don't just guess what went wrong. You need to pull out some targeted probes. You kind of have to act like a plumber trying to find the source of an overflowing sink to confirm your hypothesis. First things first, inspect the validator-side reject logs. Second, monitor your queue lengths and CPU spikes. Because if the queues are spiking in perfect lockstep with forwarding bursts, well, your sink is overflowing because the load is arriving way faster than it can process it. And third, use per-transaction trace IDs to track exactly where those duplicates are coming from. This disciplined approach ensures you're actually making evidence-driven decisions, not just going on a hunch. Section 6, next steps. Let's talk about putting this theory into practice. Let's wrap up this explainer with your absolute golden rules to take away from this. Number 1, always pair your latency metrics with utilization and goodput. Never look at speed without also looking at the cost and the waste. Number 2, use 95th and 99th percentiles to catch those worst-case experiences. Remember, your median latency doesn't tell you a single thing about the poor users who are stuck in a protocol traffic jam. And number 3, normalize your metrics, like we did with goodput per megabyte, to make those resource trade-offs explicitly clear. Keep these core principles handy, and you'll be making incredibly solid, evidence-based, protocol-aware decisions. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Are you ready to actually instrument Gulfstream and measure these exact trade-offs in a controlled environment? Because that is exactly what we are going to tackle next. Taking these analytical models out of the theory stage and applying them hands-on is where the real magic happens. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Foundry by Forge College. Be sure to head over to forge.college to explore the next hands-on lesson and dive even deeper into more incredible Web3 learning. Keep measuring, keep building, and I'll see you next time.